The following is a presentation of Project Independence and WCWP. Project Independence is the Aging in Place initiative of the town of North Hempstead.
Welcome to Project Independence and You.
Good morning and welcome to Community Talk Radio. This is Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio. I'm your host and producer, Kristina Liu, along with my co-host today, Otto Los and Paula Yule. Paula and I work together at the Department of Services for the Aging, where I'm the Director of Senior Citizen Affairs, and Paula is the Deputy Commissioner. And of course, everyone knows Otto, longtime volunteer supporter and friend at Project Independence. And this morning, we are talking all things transportation, which is certainly a hot topic on this show and in Project Independence. And we have Cynthia Brown, who is the Executive Director of the New York Coalition for Transportation Safety. And we're going to discuss all about what that coalition provides. So thank you for joining us, Cynthia.
Thank you.
So there is something we could talk. I mean, before the break, we were laughing because we said we have to slow down because we all were sharing our pet peeves about transportation. And you know, what day was it? There was a holiday. Oh, on Memorial Day. My husband and I were on the road and it was so empty at one moment. He's like, this just shows you how congested living on the island is. And I always find that, you know, on days that people, you know, don't have school or something, you realize how many cars are on the road in general, and certainly not driving safely as well. And in North Hempstead, you know, on top of that, you know, we have a lot of communities that are pedestrian based. You know, a lot of people are walking. And then, of course, that adds a whole nother host of, you know, safety concerns. So I'd love to dive into all that and what the coalition is. So let's start with, what is the New York Coalition for Transportation?
We were originally the New York Coalition for Safety Belt Use. So I didn't work there then, but from 1980 to 85, they were a group of 150 different agencies, mostly medical, led by the Medical Society of the State of New York, to pass the seatbelt law in New York State.
Oh, wow.
So in July of 85, I believe it passed, and in December of 86, it went into effect. They gave a great
realized that
It was way before.
Yeah, I thought it was way before too.
child seats were a little before that, but
Yeah,
safety belt. And in New York, the seatbelt law is what they call a primary, which means that a police officer can stop you for not wearing your seatbelt, whereas in many other states, there's still about, 5 or 6 states that don't have a seatbelt law.
Really? I had not.
And in many states that do have it, it isn't a primary law. So in other words, you would only ever get a ticket for it if you were speeding and the officer saw you and stopped you for speeding and then noticed that you were not buckled up, they would give you a ticket. In New York, you can get a ticket no matter where you're sitting in the car if you're unbuckled. That backseat rider, that's relatively new.
Which is the fault of the driver then.
Yeah,
The driver's the
Be
one,
responsible.
because he didn't make the, right.
So the law is everyone in the car must have a seatbelt
Yeah.
on.
Regardless of size or.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Right. So from there, that, believe it or not, process was funded by the automobile industry. The American Manufacturers Association for automobiles. And they were doing it because there was some kind of a law in this country, in Congress, that said if you had a seatbelt law, if you passed the seatbelt law, you didn't have to put airbags in your cars. So once Ford, the only cars that had airbags in them were the very upscale, very expensive cars, Mercedes, Lincolns, that kind of thing. And so Ford went ahead and put them in all their cars. And once Ford did it, then everybody did it. So then it became like a moot point, So they defunded their traffic safety by, I guess, early 90s, which is kind of when I got involved in it. And we were also funded in part by New York State Department of Motor Vehicles, because we are a not-for-profit. And we work strictly off grant funding. So when they defunded it, the state picked up some of the funding, but we had to write a grant for it. And so starting in, I think, 1990 or something, we started to apply for state funds, And there are specific state funds that come from New York, not New York, from the Federal Department of Transportation that go to the whole country. I don't know what's going to happen now, but
Yeah.
they did go to the whole country. And you applied for them. The state applied for them, and the state in turn allowed you to apply to them for funding. They would put out every 5 years like a traffic safety plan, what their priorities were. They would list, and that was always based on crash data, which in recent years has become much more efficient. It used to be so far behind, it was almost irrelevant. There were two kinds that we used. One is the hospital data, which is called Sparks data, and the other is the data that comes off of the MV-104s, the report you fill out if you have a crash. So the data doesn't usually agree, the two sets of data. And there was also data collected from the medical examiner's office because many people who were killed in a crash or by a car didn't die at the scene. So that
right.
might be,
Right,
could
for a
be,
different issue. They
right.
Die a month later.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so complicated. On this
Yeah.
forum that Newsday ran last week, they had 4 people who were speaking to different topics. And as they spoke, you realized that there were more topics than 4 that go into, into impact this. So now everything is data. When I first came into it, it was more like it was police reports, but my office is in Public Works, and I had a relationship with the commissioner simply by virtue of the fact that my office was next door to his. So I once asked him how long it took to analyze a police report. He said to do it right, 2 days.
Really?
Or a crash, it was very involved. So I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, they computerized it and they put computers in all the police cars, and it's called TRACS. I don't even know what it stands for, but it's TRACS. And they put them in all the police cars so that the data gets entered
it,
right then and there. And that's what goes up
Yeah.
to Albany now. So we're only a year behind now. I don't know about the hospitals, but we're only a year behind in the data.
So seatbelts are one of the things that the
Yes.
coalition got involved with, and it's still hard to believe that people don't use
I know,
seatbelts.
and it did make a huge difference.
Yeah, I mean, you read about accidents today. So-and-so was ejected out of the car.
Right.
Well,
Yes,
obviously,
you know
they
right
didn't have a
away.
seatbelt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't get ejected
Yeah.
if you have a seatbelt.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain the mentality why you wouldn't wear a seatbelt.
Well, you know what it is too, especially nowadays with new cars. You're notified if you're not wearing your seatbelt.
Right.
So
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
you
yeah,
have
yeah.
like
You're gonna get a
like
beep,
a
beep.
second layer
Yeah,
of difference.
yeah.
And then mine's like, hello,
Yeah.
someone's like, put it on. But
It's my understanding that younger people now have stopped using them as they were it was from the time that they really cracked down and the state and the federal government gave police departments money to do extra enforcement. So you've probably seen them there. They would do a stop,
Stop.
at least
Yeah.
up till COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they would pull people
Yeah,
over
just to
that
check,
didn't
yeah.
have their seatbelt on. And I think that they're starting to resume that, but I'm not positive. They stopped really. There were many factors that caused it. There are people that thought it was discriminatory. There were other people that felt that, it wasn't sufficient. It didn't do enough. And so it kind of slowed down. But the grants go through our office. So I do believe that they have started to give them to the police departments, but it's not a big deal. They maybe 4 times a year, they would do a stop
Right.
and check.
Before the show started, we chatted a little bit about the fact that everybody I know of, and I think everybody here will agree, that hardly a day goes by where people don't talk about how terrible it is on the roads right now. It's a big topic of conversation. And I know you wrote an article back in April 10th in Newsday, which I found very interesting. And you covered a lot of points that are about why we're in this mess, and maybe we could go walk through a little bit of that stuff. Like, first of all, accidents happen because of drugs and drinking.
Yes, that's still probably the primary contributing factor. That and speed.
Yeah.
But
And usually it's both together.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
yeah, because when you're drugged up, you think you
Right.
can go fast and you'll
Yeah.
never get hurt.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's not just you who gets hurt, it's the people around you who could get killed while you're
Yeah.
playing your little game.
Yeah.
But you talked about something that I found interesting also, driving loophole. People who are on drugs and are driving and they get pulled over. So now they get pulled over. Now what?
There is a very astute woman who used to be the assistant district attorney in Nassau County for vehicular crimes. For various reasons, when the administration changed, she was, you know, how everybody has
Yeah.
to turn in or whatever. And so she now works in Suffolk County for the district attorney. And she has sponsored or gotten sponsors for legislation that is trying to address this. It is actually coming up for a vote very shortly, but she has been working on it for years. The way New York State's law is written, there's a list of drugs that are considered dangerous to drive with they're in your system. But it's an old list and it's like the original list. So if a police officer cannot identify the drug the person used and that drug is on that list, they can't hold them.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, wow.
It's really a loop. We're one of only 4 states that
my
still
gosh.
has this law.
Now, there's no test either that they can give, I understand.
No, it's not like
not like alcohol.
this isn't funny, but we
Yeah,
said,
right,
think
yeah.
about it. When they give you a breathalyzer test, you're either drunk or you're not. They don't say, well, were you drinking Jim Beam or were you
Right.
drinking
Yeah.
tequila?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you don't need a list. Like they might have been
Right.
drinking.
Alcohol.
But
period.
now they've done that and actually,
Right. Right.
and what actually compounds that and makes it worse is that there is no test for marijuana.
Hmm.
And that is strictly police officers training. There's
It's just
eye
process.
tests that
Right.
they do and whatever. So it's really, it's a sin. And we often have people come and speak, excuse me,
Mhm.
that have lost family members because of this law. And they watch them walk away. If they can't get them on something else, you know, if they didn't break another traffic law in addition to using the
Like
drugs.
seatbelt law.
Yeah.
There was an incident, this was in the Rockaways, only about 2 years ago. There was a young woman who was standing at a bus stop waiting to be picked up on the corner. I think it was, I don't know, Rockaway Boulevard and 102nd Street or something. And there was a CVS on the corner and it was a bus lane. Obviously, that's why she was in the bus stop. And a car, the driver claims he fell asleep. It was 2:00 in the afternoon.
Mm.
And he hit her in that bus stop. He killed her almost instantly. And they couldn't. They have what they call DREs. They're drug recognition experts. And they came to the scene and they tried to, you know, and he said, no, I was just sleepy. I didn't do anything. They went through different things. All he got was 30 days.
Wow. Oh my God.
So it's really,
Yeah, it's very complicated.
And the bottom line is right now, I read in your thing that 35% of the crashes are caused by drugs.
right.
And we can't do anything about it at this moment in time.
No, it's a sin.
Is there any hope that there's
Well, it got further this year in the Senate and the House, in locally, than it has before. And it's picked up a lot of sponsors. CBS has been doing a regular program on it to try to, you know, get the law passed. Again, the reason I asked the DA, I asked her, why is anybody reluctant to pass
I
it?
was
Why
just
don't you
thinking,
want
I
it?
was literally,
And again, they think it's discriminatory, that you're just going to pick on certain people and, you know.
Well, I mean, I can speak from family and personal experience. It doesn't matter what your background, looks can
Right.
be a problem.
Right.
You know, and you know, I'm a big advocate, which I have done nothing about. But the bottom line is, I believe we have the technology to catch people driving like maniacs
Yeah.
with TVs and do what has to be done to say, okay, boys and girls, we caught you going 100, you were tailgating, you didn't use any signals, and
Yeah.
you're going to be in big trouble. We may put you in jail or whatever. But then there are people who don't want to do that because that's discriminatory, because your privacy.
Right.
And, I think, I don't know, I don't get it. Your right to privacy kind of ends when you do those kinds of things.
I know it's there's arguments to
Yeah.
be made on both sides or whatever. It is hard, but one of the things that we did talk about, I don't know if it's I can't remember exactly what I said, and I don't know. But one of the
It was
things
fresh in my mind.
yeah, that we did talk about is that if a person repeatedly commits these violations, let's say it's speeding or with drunk driving, and if they get caught more than once or twice, they will lose their license for like 10 years. They really do. And they enforce that. They could apply that technique to other areas. So let's say somebody has been stopped for speeding and they've got 6 unpaid tickets for speeding. And nothing happens. Nobody a year or two ago, the city was going to do this thing with red light cameras where if somebody had 5 tickets for red light camera and they weren't paid and they didn't do anything, they were going to make them come in and take like a class and do, whatever else. They never followed through with it, so it didn't happen. So you can make the best laws in the book, but if nobody enforces them,
Exactly.
Yeah.
nobody pays any attention to them. So with the speeding, there is a way that they can put something that's called a delimiter, I think, into a car, a
So you
manufacturer.
can't go over it.
Right.
Go,
Yeah.
right.
Just like they can put
The
a
breathalyzer?
device, yes, in
right,
your
yeah.
car, so that you have to breathe into it before, and that is prescribed for you by the judge when you go to court. And, it only comes out once you've met the stipulations of your sentencing. So there are things that they can do, and I agree with you on the
Well,
cameras.
we're going to take a quick break because this is certainly a hot topic, and we will jump right back in with Cynthia Brown, who is the executive director of the New York Coalition for Transportation Safety. You're listening to Project Independence in You on LIU Public Radio.
Take WCWP with you wherever you go with the WCWP app. Listen live 24/7 to all of our streams, all from one app. Plus, call the studios directly from the app and visit our social media. Download the app through the iOS App Store on Apple devices or the Google Play Store on Android by searching WCWP Radio, or visit WCWP.org for links. The WCWP app, available now on iOS and Android devices.
Welcome back to Project Independence in You on LIU Public Radio. I'm your host, Kristina Liu, along with my co-hosts today, Paula Ewell and Otto Lowe's, and we're diving back in with Cynthia Brown, who is the executive director of the New York Coalition for Transportation Safety. And we're talking all things safety and transportation. And, it's just, you look at these things, and as you were saying, Cynthia, it's just, there's, progress, but then it's halted if it's not enforced, so it's like you're constantly doing this back and forth thing. And I'm so glad to have you on here, really just to raise awareness too, because, I'm such a proponent also of defensive driving classes. And I said, no matter how many times I take it, there's always something new that you learn.
or you forgot,
right.
maybe
It's
at
really
home,
true. And,
right.
and I do think, before the break, we were saying that like sometimes, people kind of be like mandated to do that again. I think that should be kind of hopefully in the future of things, because if anything, at least it's kind of drilling it into you, and hopefully it seeps in and people certainly follow it. But
The thing there again is you can't do much about is that it's like preaching to the choir.
yeah,
People
right. The
who
people are doing.
Yeah.
are thinking about defensive.
But however, a lot of people will take defensive driving. Let's say you do rack up a lot of tickets, right? Then you're able to knock down that. Or, you had points on your license and you can get that down. Who doesn't want money off on their insurance,
Right.
no matter what kind of driver you
Yeah.
are. So hopefully those kind of little incentives,
That
certainly.
would never happen. But, suppose when drivers get caught doing whatever bad things, all right? Suppose they said, okay, part of your process is you're going to go to a symposium of bad drivers and you're all going to sit around and talk about why you drive the way
Right.
you do.
Right.
And maybe, some mentality.
Right.
There actually is something similar to that in
Is there?
Suffolk County, but it's just for young drivers.
Oh,
It's for drivers that just got their license. And the gentleman who used to work with me, who retired, sometimes helps them with that program. And he said, you just cannot believe have to come with a parent or a guardian. That the attitude that so many of them have, that
Yeah.
they don't see. These are the same people who are now doing what they call street racing.
yeah.
Which is
It's
I'm
awful.
so
It's
glad
just
you brought that
awful.
up, Cynthia, because I was just talking
So
with my husband,
scary.
and I hear it, in
Yep.
late at night. I was just last night I was walking my dog, and it was late, and he got startled because you heard all of a sudden all these cars, because we were near a main road, and it's so dangerous, and I
Even on
constantly
side
see it.
streets.
Yeah,
Like periodically, we have a
yeah,
and a big noise and boom,
yeah.
and like, what do you do? This is just crazy.
But Suffolk has formed a task force of police
something good.
officers who just work on that. In fact, there was one about 2 months ago who was very badly injured, and he survived. They didn't expect him to survive, and they're patrol. They shut down the LIE like on a weekend, at 2 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah.
and race. I think we'd be better off if they brought back those old racetracks that
Keep it contained.
Yeah.
Car
Right.
race.
Yeah.
Used to have them.
that were
Yeah.
nice to a doctor I worked
Yeah.
with said that he was a car fan.
Mhm.
He liked to build them,
Yeah.
and he said, they need a place to be
Yeah,
able
to do,
to
yeah.
this.
And
So.
why not have them? I mean, what do we have?
Well, it used
Roosevelt
to be
Raceway?
like Freeport
Yeah.
and,
Yeah, but why did they go away?
people weren't going, maybe.
I think land became more
Yeah.
valuable for other
Yeah,
uses.
there you
So,
go.
So,
Yeah.
the noise.
I lived in near Dexter Park, it was called years
Yeah.
ago in Woodhaven.
Yeah.
And Dexter Park, when baseball started to peter out, they converted to a stock car track.
Okay.
We lived a half a block from
Oh,
that.
wow.
So you heard the
it.
races.
Right. Yeah.
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 Now, with the
But-
coalition, who is it? It covers in the entire New York state. So there's
Well, I am actually the not for profit does, but I primarily work in Suffolk, Nassau, and
Okay.
Queens.
Gotcha. Did you have more on your article, Otto, that you wanted to?
Well, I mean,
want to interrupt.
I think the bottom line is that we all know there's a lot of bad drivers, there's a lot of bad stuff that goes on, and the question is, how can you stop it?
Yeah.
And I think it just requires a lot of wear and tear. If
Well,
you
it
will.
also requires a lot of people with a will to want to stop it.
Right.
As long as people keep getting away with ridiculous things like, come to a red light, everybody else is stopped, they look around and they drive through it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's contagious. So the
Yeah.
car behind them says, well, what am I sitting here
Yeah,
for?
I can do it
I
too.
can drive through it. I can do it too, And it's a lot of these simple things. Now they've put, or they will be putting, cameras in work zones.
Oh,
It's
that
a
could be good
movable
too.
camera. It's not the kind of camera like a red light camera is, or in the city, the speed cameras. It's a camera that's mounted on something so that, because obviously work zones come and go, they're not going to
Yeah.
be. I haven't even seen any here. And I am in front of one where I live, one of the biggest work zones on the LIE right now. But you couldn't go fast there if you wanted to. And
Right.
so, but I think that, when you get out on Long Island or you start to go upstate, those work zones, people fly through them.
Mhm.
And so the cameras, I don't have the data with me, but the number of tickets that they issued, Now I would hope that they make those people pay those
them.
tickets.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
It's an
mean, otherwise,
expensive
what's the-
ticket.
Yeah.
that movable camera thing, I'm thinking, like, turn signals seem to be an option, like some people,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
some cars don't get them.
Right.
You buy the car, you don't get a turn
Right.
signal.
Right.
You know?
They didn't get that package.
Right,
yeah.
Right. Oh, I say, I talk out loud sometimes. I say, oh, that's one of those cars that doesn't.
Let's get the
have turn
turn signals.
signals, And the other one is, I live in New Hyde Park where there's 898,000 stop signs.
Oh my God. Yes.
Which I
know.
understand, all right? But those are also optional for a lot of people. And
Yes.
I almost stop at every corner, whether it
Yeah.
be a stop sign,
Yeah.
because people come flying
In
through.
Great Neck, I don't recall the name of it, but it's going north in Great Neck, going like out towards the Merchant Marine
Kings
Academy
Point?
and Kings
Ken-
Point,
Kensington,
that
yeah.
that took it upon themselves to put up a camera on a stop sign. And they reduced people going through that stop sign by 98%. Now, they never got permission from state DOT to put that camera up.
They took matters into their own hands.
So,
I wrote an article
Yeah.
for this newsletter that we have, and it was based on giving a six-pack of beer to a friend of mine to sit on a corner where he lives in New Hyde Park.
Yeah.
And he was recording in 1 hour how many people went through the stop sign. And, and it was unbelievable.
What was the outcome?
The outcome was like half didn't stop.
Yeah.
Wow.
The other 1/4 crawled
Drifted
right through,
right, yeah.
and maybe 1/4 of them stopped.
Right. It's just a slow stop,
mean-
not a stop. It's like
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of them just don't stop.
stop at all.
it's true. We did, through the grant, there was funding, and I actually used kids from New York Tech to work on this the first time. We did observations, and that's what we did. We went to what we knew were really very busy streets, and it wasn't even stop signs, it was red lights.
Right.
Yeah.
But there weren't cameras on those red lights, so you count the volume of traffic as best you can. And then you count how many, it's not hard to count the number of people that go through the light.
Right.
But you realize, and that again, to get back to left turning vehicles, many vehicles that are making a left turn are going through a light when they do it. And it's not like they're allowed to make that right on red. Several years ago, the state completely redid Hempstead Turnpike as far as safety was concerned.
Yeah.
And they put up those signs that said no right on red at pretty much every intersection. And for a long time, it really changed the number of deaths that were occurring on that road. But now, it's worn off, and everybody was in on it when we did it. It's only 17 miles of road. So it's really, Hofstra is
dangerous.
there.
Yeah,
Coliseum was there. The character of the road changes so much from when you get on by Belmont Racetrack to when you get off in Farmingdale.
Yeah.
So it kind of ends up the way it started, but in the middle, it's 4, 5, 6 lanes.
Yeah.
The hospital, Nassau University Medical Center was there.
Right.
They put up a railing down the middle so that people couldn't walk across the middle of the street. They changed bus stops. They replaced all the street lighting so that people could see. And they changed the signs, and they did a great deal, and it was a very successful project, and it was imitated in a few other places around the state that had the same kind of a situation. They need more than, I don't know, COVID just knocked out everything.
Yeah.
More people started to ride bikes, ride motorcycles, ride all these
Oh, right.
mobility
E-bikes.
things
E-bike.
that are
Yeah.
killing a lot of
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, because they're so
Yeah.
dangerous. Some of
Right.
them. Yeah, my God, these
I
electronic
think you
bikes.
called it micro mobility.
And people
Ah,
started
interesting.
walking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they want to walk for their health.
Yeah.
We have a program actually through Long Island Council of Hospitals that's called Walk with the Doc.
Oh, that's a wonderful program. In
Walk
Suffolk.
what?
So that's in Suffolk.
We
County?
do it, here, but we do it Nassau and
Oh,
Suffolk.
we do. Oh,
I'm sorry, what was that one?
It's called Walk with the Doc.
Walking.
I knew a
It
Suffolk.
has to be done through a hospital
Oh, we have to.
because they belong to
Yeah.
but I can give you information.
Yeah, that's
We
great.
do
Yeah.
that.
And what we do is,
cool.
we have a doctor. I'm doing one in Glen Cove next week. At the senior center. We start
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, they're wonderful.
The doctor comes and they talk to the people who are there about why you want to walk. It helps with if you're diabetic, if you, if you require exercise, whatever. And then I say to them, all right, it's wonderful to walk, but you really need to plan your route because you don't
Safety.
want to get killed
Yeah,
while you're out
yeah.
walking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
And there's really concrete tips to
Right.
walk safely.
Yes, there are.
I'm a
So,
walker, and
Yeah.
I see dangerous situations. Like
Yeah.
I will make a point of not crossing Jericho Turnpike.
I wouldn't.
Oh,
And
Oh, gosh.
I'm
This
still,
highway's even
yeah,
worse.
Oh, my
I'm
God,
still
yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
nimble. But I'm thinking about people who walk, who have some mobility
Yeah.
issues
Yeah.
to begin with. The chances of getting across that street,
Yeah.
Well, it's a problem because traffic signals, there's a book called The Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, and that's for the whole country. And I don't know how they arrive at, it's like, how did they decide where a seatbelt should fit somebody,
Yeah.
Right.
It's the
Yeah.
same
Yeah,
in every
right.
Yeah.
car. Well, traffic signals work a lot the same way. They time you as to, what age you should be to be able to walk across that, well, not what age, but how fast you should
Right.
be able to walk
Yeah.
across that street. And they did increase it within the last few years, but it was like, 3 feet a second or something.
Yeah.
Anybody who has
Any
Any mobility issue. You're right, right.
can't do it.
Right.
And we tell people sometimes if they try to go faster or walk faster or they see the light changing.
It's riskier.
Well,
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was on a very narrow street the other day, going very slowly because wasn't sure where I was, and a lady just fell right in front of me.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
She was just walking from one side of the street to the other, and I thought she was
Yeah.
that something happened, and she just collapsed. Her leg must have given
Yeah.
out or something.
Yeah.
Thank God I was going very slow, but
Well, I mean, I
Yeah.
could visualize like if you try to accelerate a little bit, you could stumble if you're not, you're just
And you
not
get
agile.
anxious that you're not going
Right,
to
yeah,
get to the
exactly,
side,
that's what-
you know?
as falls are the greatest cause of hospitalization,
Yeah.
no matter how old you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they're much more serious when you're older.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
With the e-bike, so like we went hiking last weekend in Compton Park, and you're on a nice trail, but paved trail, and a lot of people, beautiful day, and there was these like two teenagers on e-bikes on the trail,
yeah.
just zipping, like I don't know how fast they go, but fast.
It's
And there are women with babies, and my husband yelled at one of them, like, "Hey guys, and they're like, look at me, I can barely walk," like. But it's so weird that it's not regulated. It's like having a car
Well, that's-
driving on a walking path. Is
they got out way ahead of the law.
Yes.
When Cuomo was actually governor,
Yeah.
when they passed the first law, but all the first law did, and it's still really the only law,
yeah,
was make them legal because they assumed that in most instances, the people who were using them, and at that time it was probably true,
yeah,
were delivery people.
yeah.
Right.
They-
Right. That's definitely how.
What's the law that you have to be a certain age, or
Well, you have to be over 16.
do you need a
That's about
license
it.
of any sort?
Only if they go over certain speeds.
Do you have to follow laws?
were
Like,
like
you have to wait for red
kids.
lights?
No,
Should you be on the road?
Yeah, there's-
They don't have to be registered. They have to, if they go over 30 miles an hour, most of it changes. They fall more into a motorcycle category than a bicycle category. And then you have stand-up scooters, you have the sit-down scooters, you have all electric scooters, which are actually, in my opinion, the most dangerous because if you're walking, you can't hear them. You don't hear them coming.
Yeah.
They
You can
should be
hear the
equipped.
e-bikes.
Yeah.
Bicycle by law is treated the same by New York State DMV law, is treated the same as a car. And so therefore,
Correct.
when you ride it, I'm not telling you everybody has this, but they're supposed to have a horn.
Right.
They're supposed to have a white blinker, a white reflector in the front, a red reflector in the back. If they use them at night, they're supposed to have a light on them that reflects 300 to 500 feet, so that they can be seen.
Yeah.
These things don't have that law. With a bike, at least, and in Nassau, you have to be up to 18 before you don't need a helmet.
Wow.
But the rest of the state is only 14.
Now, but are there like pedestrians? Like, I see people walking in the street, all right? And that sometimes drives me nuts
Right.
because
This is sidewalk.
there's a sidewalk
Sidewalk,
about
yeah.
this big
I know.
Yeah.
right
Yeah,
next to them.
right.
And they insist on, where I live, I see it all the time. They're out.
You figure out why? Because I can't.
No, I don't get it. I mean, and not only that, they're never like hugged right next to the parked car. They're out there
Right.
somewhere. And you're driving, and now all of a sudden they look at you like, "Oh, what are you doing
Right.
here with that car?"
Right.
Pedestrians by law are supposed to walk facing traffic.
Yes,
Half of them
yeah.
don't.
That's
No.
so true. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. My wife always says that if you ride a bike, you should do it facing traffic.
Yeah.
Bike,
Yeah.
it's the opposite. Bike,
Yeah,
the law.
that's what I said. I
Right.
said, no,
You're
you
supposed to go.
I know.
I don't want to know what hits you.
You.
Yeah.
There are
Right.
places that is actually posted.
Yeah.
It says bicycles must ride with traffic or pedestrians walk against traffic.
Well, some of the
Resort
bike lanes are a
places,
little
lot of them,
skinny.
Yeah.
They must have had a lot of people struck.
Yeah. So like, Cynthia, how do you is there in the who's on the coalition? Is it just like anyone can join, or is it just
Oh, no,
people different?
we have what we call a traffic safety board, which was established, I don't even know what year, way before my time, in New York State, and there is one in every county.
Okay.
So there's 62 of them. And if you don't have a traffic safety board, you really can't apply for the grant funding.
Gotcha.
So the people and how people go on to the Traffic Safety Board differs somewhat from county to county, but there actually are guidelines. In Nassau, they could be appointed by the county exec.
Mhm.
And the problem is that they had all of these, I don't know who drew up the bylaws, but they wanted, now this job pays absolutely nothing.
Mhm.
And they wanted people to do financial disclosures. And so they didn't want to.
Yeah.
Right.
So the person who heads up who runs the meetings is a paid person for Nassau County who has the title of Traffic Safety Director or whatever they're calling them these days. And I actually run the meetings. We meet in the Garden City Police Department. We welcome. The purpose of having appointed members was if there were issues you had to vote on. But generally speaking, our meetings are informational.
Right.
It isn't for the purpose of, we oversee the grants that the police departments get we're their liaison with the state. They used to actually come through our office. And then thank God the state started doing them directly, but the financial end of it still comes through our office. And we have representatives, trauma coordinators from the hospitals, people who do other programs that are funded through New York State. They come, but we would welcome you. It's an open meeting.
Do
Well, I don't hold that thought because we are taking another quick break. After the break, we will continue talking with Cynthia Brown, Executive Director of the New York Coalition for Transportation Safety. You're listening to Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio.
WCWP is your home for great music and great conversation. You'll find all that and more on WCWP.org. Listen live on the web, check out the lineup, subscribe to podcasts, and stay up to date on the latest station events. Get in touch with us and let us know if you like what you're hearing. And find out how you can support or get involved at the only community public radio station serving Nassau's North Shore. Plus, sign up to get a free bumper sticker. It's all online at WCWP.org.
Welcome back to Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio. I'm your host, Kristina Liu, along with my co-host, Paula Ewell and Otto Los. And we're talking with Cynthia Brown, who is the Executive Director of the New York Coalition for Transportation Safety, about all kinds of different traffic safety, pedestrian safety, and, just trying to spread the word on these things. And now in your coalition too, do you guys do educational seminars and stuff for the public? And
Yes. We do primarily education. Our grant that we get from the state is for education. So we reach out to the community. Again, when we write the proposal, interestingly enough, I had a call yesterday from a woman who was writing a grant at the federal level for Village of Hempstead Police Department, because the Village of Hempstead has the worst fatality rate pretty much in the county. And at one of our recommendation, actually my office's recommendation, they gave extra money to the police department. It's only 3.5 square miles. They had over 90 deaths.
Is it because of Hempstead Turnpike or
It's
is it
it's their location.
Yeah.
It's the Long Island Railroad stop. It's the
Southern
bus
State comes
depot. It's the courthouse.
Yeah, it's got like a lot of
It's shopping, and it's a really strange mixture of roads that
Well,
come
there's that
together.
one road that has all the car dealers on it.
Franklin
Right.
Avenue.
Tried that.
Frank,
Yeah.
that's
Mhm.
Frank.
Tried to
Yeah.
walk on it.
But also
Yeah.
Clinton, which
Clinton is
Yeah,
like this.
yes.
Yeah.
My mom
Like
worked
the-
off of there, and it was I
Wild.
drop off, and I'd
Turns.
be in a panic
Yeah,
myself
right,
because
yeah.
there's so many
and
different.
on that road, if you continue north, it becomes Glen Cove Road.
Yeah,
Right.
which is
Big.
boy.
And
the
then
whole-
you can't miss it because you go into Garden City and there's this big stop sign that's all lit up with flashing lights
Yeah.
or whatever. All you have to do is go 10 feet back the other way into Hempstead.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's nothing. There's
Yeah.
the
It's
speed
like
sign.
across the
nailed to the
Mason
phone
Dixon.
pole.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. I noticed recently, my daughter lives on Cathedral Avenue, and they put one section of it, we've been trying to figure it out, huge speed bumps for a couple blocks long. And we were trying to figure, like, serious speed bumps, like,
Right.
you have to totally stop or you're gonna,
Right.
and we were like, something must have happened here but I think it's the village of Hempstead, but
Mm.
Well,
just,
the
it's
village
such,
must have put them in because I don't think that the county puts them in.
Yeah.
I know Long
and we
Beach is-
really, so everyone, you're going 5, 10 miles an hour because you
Yeah.
have to stop.
Yeah, because the speed bump.
We
It's
tried to
long.
get speed bumps where I live, and,
Yeah.
on my understanding, and I wasn't involved, but
It's a county.
my understanding is you can't, that the county won't allow
So
it,
that must
even
be
though it was
village.
right by a high school.
And I'm thinking maybe they got a grant, maybe got some funding.
They may
And
have.
they said, where is the place where
Right.
it's most dangerous, where we can put these? But it's very noticeable because you have to go very slow there now. So, which is not bad. I think that's a good thing.
Right.
Yeah.
There speed bumps I know in New York City or in Queens where I live. They can't be on bus routes.
Ah.
And there's stipulations as
Yeah,
to,
where you can put.
but
yeah.
they don't have a policy against putting them up. They just have guidelines as to where they
Right.
can go.
Yeah.
Like by North Shore Towers, and there's a road that goes along the parkway.
Yeah.
Right.
There's speed bumps on that, and part of it's in Nassau and part of it's in
Yeah.
the city.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cynthia, how did you get involved with,
Yeah.
this kind of traffic safety and pedestrian safety world? Is this something that you kind of fell into, or that you
It
sort of?
really actually is to some degree.
Yeah.
I was working at Queensborough Community College, and there was a woman that I worked with who had did classes for Queensborough Community College, brought in not the regular classes, but the
Like adult
fun classes.
Oh, fun.
That's right.
Everyone wanted to
Right.
take.
And also all extra physical activity. They had a pool and whatever else. And so I started working with her, and then she took on this whole thing with the seatbelts. So they hired her to this group that was pushing to get to do public relations for promotion, lobby, whatever you want to call it. And when the law actually passed, the borough president in Queens hired staff to, they have a transportation person. And that transportation person, what turned out to be the woman that I wound up working for. And I was doing a program at Benjamin Cardozo High School, and she came and asked me would I go to work for her. This was what I
So
was
this wasn't
talking
like a
about.
childhood dream.
Right.
No commercial time for television.
Right.
Yeah, there you go.
Something like-
Life takes different turns.
Yes, yes. I took a break and I had my children. But and I'm going back to Cardozo this afternoon, believe it or not. Actually, for a program that you probably will be reading more and more about, it's called 25 Alive. And that is a program geared to new drivers. And it's for people who take like the defensive driving class, but it's mostly meant for young people who don't go through driver's ed and don't
Oh,
do any
yeah,
of that.
yeah.
So this is the first time they're doing it anywhere in the city or out here.
Oh, wow.
Frankly, maybe that's where this whole thing has to start.
It's starting from a younger
When
age, right.
people are learning
But
how
there
to
were
drive.
Yeah.
police departments on this, plus the safety or whatever from the school. So they must have seen a need for it. They're the ones that
Right.
brought it in. And like
It comes
anything
from
else,
School district is
it's
that
just that school.
It's just that school.
Well, I guess I don't know what their district is
yeah,
anymore, but
yeah.
I do know that the gentleman who was the assistant principal there did tell us that the reason he asked for it is because they lost a teacher on the Long Island Expressway hit by somebody going the wrong way on the
Oh,
Long
my
Island
God, yeah.
Expressway. And so they wanted this program and a scholarship to be in the name of the person, the teacher who passed away. So
You know,
that's what he's
if you
doing.
think about it, my father was a milkman. He drove a milk truck, and he took me to Broad Channel in Queens illegally to learn how to drive.
Drive, right.
But I remember my father telling me, like, always look under the wheels, this and that. He had
Yeah,
all
yeah.
kinds of stuff.
Yeah, right.
And it's not a toy.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
You're
Yeah.
using this car to get to a place safely.
Right.
And I think you almost have to start it within a family, first of all.
Yeah.
And within a lot of different approaches like this 25 Alive,
They should have 65
earlier the
live,
better.
like in
The
Lake
earlier the
too.
better. With smoking or any of those things,
Yeah.
the earlier the
Yeah.
better that
Yeah.
they realize that this.
Right. When we were doing one of the programs in Queens, there was a gentleman who worked for me who said, listen, when we go to talk to the kids, I want to do a survey with them at the end of the class. And the last question on the survey was, if you could get any kind of car, what kind would you want? And let me tell you, it was an eye opener. Most of the kids said, I'll take anything. I just want to be able to drive. But there was always a couple who said, no, I want one that'll go 90, 100 miles an hour. And I
Yeah,
thought
yeah.
to myself, this is the one
This
that
is
when they
the
get
one-
in the
yeah,
car,
yeah.
we got to look out for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we do there, you'll often see and hear now when it's written in the press that they will refer to cars as people should think of them as, it's like a gun.
Yeah.
It's a gun.
It's a
Absolutely.
weapon.
It's a weapon.
You're
Yeah.
you're using it, and I don't think these kids think about that at all.
No, because
Yeah.
we talk about that all the time on this show. It's because, it's like
They're so
people
distracted,
forget you're
too.
so distracted and you're like in your own world. Like you forget that you're driving like a vehicle. Like,
Yeah.
it's just like this little toy that you're kind of just like going in. And I do think the distraction piece is
they're
because
looking at a screen.
Yeah,
two
it's
screens.
just-
They could be looking at a
right.
phone. They could be looking at, and
Yeah,
they
we
can
didn't even
switch-
talk about
it's-
distraction.
yeah.
Oh, it's yeah.
Well,
That
I
makes me
believe like
crazy.
Waze as an example.
Yeah.
I'm a better driver
Then
because of Waze.
yeah.
I remember I was in sales and I would travel to different cities and I'd
Yeah.
wind up with a map on my lap.
Right.
Talk about distracted
Highlighter.
driving.
I can't get my ways to talk to me.
No,
Now that's a different problem.
you got to work on
That right,
You
right,
gotta go check the
the
checkout.
settings.
right, right.
But you're right, though. If it
Yeah.
talks to you, it's a big difference.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because then you hear and you don't necessarily have to look.
Yeah.
You know, but I find that because you don't have to think about,
Yeah.
okay, when am I? Okay.
Right.
And then,
I like when it gives you the reminder, like
Wouldn't that-
Yeah.
two exits away.
well, I'm going to ask you an opinion, all right?
Uh-huh.
Distracted driving. I believe that the radio can be distracted driving.
Absolutely.
You can
Well,
get caught up
yeah.
in what you're listening to, and the next thing you know, half a mile's gone by.
Yes.
And you're like, wait,
Where was
was
I?
I?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
I almost anything in the car can be a distraction. It was when we talked about distracted driving originally, that's what it was. It was, somebody eating, a woman
Smoking.
putting on her lipstick, smoking.
Smoking.
My mother set the back of her car on fire because she smoked in the car and her back window was open, and when she threw
Yeah.
Oh,
Throw it back
God.
in.
back seat.
Boy.
I
Oh
mean, this is
God.
kind of
Yeah.
got
Yeah.
distracted.
Yeah.
So, but those were all distractions. Children fighting in the back,
Yeah, of
arguing in
course.
the car, not pulling over to
To do
discipline
whatever
them
you
or
have to.
whatever.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Now, when we talk about it, it's almost completely about the phone.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there are a lot of, I think that this is hard for older people too,
Yeah.
particularly. If you go to buy a new car today, it comes equipped with
Yep.
all
Yeah.
kinds
Whether
of
you want it or not.
bells and whistles, up until the car I drive right now, I used to lease the car.
Mhm.
I only ever had one salesperson
Show you.
Yes.
We
how to
talk
do
about
it.
that
Yeah.
all
They
the time.
Don't do it. They
Mhm.
don't, they just, and most people, even my friends included, the only time they get upset is if their black or blueberry or whatever you want to call it goes out, right? It's like,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
there's other things that this car does that you're not aware of.
Right.
And my daughter, who doesn't even live around here, but when she does, and she comes and she gets in my car, all of a sudden, she's got her thing up on here.
Oh, yeah.
This
Wait,
is
mine is
Yeah.
talking to yours. Turn yours
right.
off. Turn off your
It's-
Bluetooth.
It's,
Right, right.
it's crazy.
I'm
So-
pretty tech savvy,
Yeah.
all right? But I will say also that when you look at the screen that comes with these
Yes.
cars, it's like a computer. Your car is really
It-
now an
it's
electronic.
Yeah.
getting bigger
Computer.
and bigger.
Yeah.
Talk
And-
about a distraction.
Yeah.
You got all kinds of different buttons on there that you could play with to find out what they're for.
Well, too, they've put in a lot of safety features. If you're
Yes.
straying out of.
Oh yeah, they're like beep, beep, beep,
You
beep,
know,
beep.
it goes off.
Yeah.
But
That's my mom's infamous beep.
Turning
beep,
is
beep.
is excellent. The fact that it beep beeps
Yeah.
if you're going to try to turn and there's a car
Yeah.
Mhm.
in that lane.
The reverse.
Yeah, those are all good.
That's a-
Backup
that's a big-
cameras are
Backup
good.
cameras are great.
Yeah.
I think that, I don't know how much time we have left, but
Like 5
The
minutes.
size of the vehicles today is what's contributing to the number more of people who are on a bike or
How
walking.
big they are?
Their
Yeah.
injuries
So many
are much
trucks.
greater.
Yeah.
First of all, they weigh much more than a sedan. They are higher. So when they strike a person, a sedan strikes somebody mid-body. These strike them from the
With
more likely in the
nerves,
head.
maybe that's.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so the hospitals and the federal government actually changed their injury scale, the severity of it, because where the person is being injured is changing. And it's really hard. And again, the electric vehicles don't make any noise when
Yeah,
they come.
yeah.
And there's a tremendous, tremendous danger of fire
Yeah.
if
Right.
one of them are
Yeah.
involved in a crash, because it's a very difficult fire to put out. And that's true of the batteries on the bikes also. And
That's so scary.
there's going to be federal legislation as to where those bicycle batteries and scooter batteries can be
made.
stored and put in
Yeah.
and whatever. Laura Gillen, who
Yeah.
is
Yes.
from here,
Yeah.
I did a press event with her about a month ago where she's sponsoring, I
The
think.
battery storage
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, is sponsoring legislation for, road
Yeah,
safety.
because I do think that's gonna be, because I talk all the time, because my husband's like, oh, they're so classy. You are not, and mind you, we're in our 40s, and I'm like, Jim, I said, you are not riding this electric bike today. Because I've seen so many dangerous things, and because I think it's, as you were saying, it came out too fast before all the laws. So it's like, oh, it's a bike, it's a bike, and then so kids look at it, oh, cool, this is like a fun, fast bike, and it's so incredibly dangerous because I've seen like the speeds that these things can go.
If you can, the fire department is really the only one that's up on this stuff, the batteries. And last
great,
week I
yeah.
heard a fireman speak, and he said the biggest problem with the batteries is even if you take them out and you store them someplace, and it's been 3 months, they can still catch on fire.
Yeah.
It's
It's like when the hoverboards originally
Yeah.
came out,
And
and
fire.
many, many years ago. And I remember, like, obviously now it's gotten like a little better, even though my little niece wanted one. I was like, I will not be responsible for buying this for you. But the batteries were just blowing up, and it was someone I think in Massapequa or something. And my brother was younger at the time, had got one. Of course, my mom put an end to that.
Right,
Like,
right.
send it back. You're done with this. But it was so scary because here you are, you think that, oh, it's like this little thing, and
Like
the
a totally
battery
must,
blows
right,
up.
right,
It's so many different things to worry about.
I got a different topic, all right. I'm one of the victims of a $250 school bus ticket.
Yes.
And I believe I am super conscientious
With
about
basement.
school buses having had a lot of kids and grandchildren. And I got the ticket in Hempstead somewhere, not actually more south than Hempstead.
Right.
And I was on a road that I believe had a divider in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going that way,
We're
the
exactly the
bus is
same. Otto, we
going
got the
this
same
way,
exact
and
thing.
it had the thing down.
Yep.
But it never entered
Right.
my head that, that
On
bus was like
towards
a
the other-
mile.
would have had an ally in the gentleman who used to be our commissioner in DPW. But the law does actually read.
I looked it up after I got the $250 ticket.
Then now I know.
Did you know that was the law? I mean,
Yeah.
you've been driving for like a long time.
Yeah.
Like your head said, if the bus is there and the stop sign is up, you do everything the right way. But how are you looking across the road and up?
Well, you're probably not.
You can't. It's not safe.
I didn't even know there was a bus there, to be honest.
We didn't know
Looking
either till we
back
saw the
on it,
picture.
There was a 2-lane on both directions.
Yep,
I would
same
imagine that
spot.
when those bus routes are planned, they don't want children crossing. That would
Yeah.
be really dangerous.
Yeah.
So I would think that probably in most routes, the children would exit on the side that,
Right.
Yeah, they're not
They
going
don't-
to walk
Not
over.
walking across that.
either.
Yeah.
But I still
But,
got the
yeah.
$250.
This way,
That's a big ticket.
That's
We got
tough.
the same in the same place. Like
No,
I'm
no,
sure-
Cynthia, if someone's interested in getting more information about the coalition or, joining or knowing where you're doing different seminars, is there a contact number? How do they find
No,
you?
they can call my office. So
Yeah, that's an interesting
Oh,
thing.
hold on, give the number, Otto. Hold on. What's the phone? Do you have the phone number?
yeah,
Let's see.
Well, you talked about a number of different programs, Walk with a Doc and this and that. Are those types of pieces of information on the website at all? or-
Walk Safe Long Island.
Okay, Walk Safe Long Island. There we go. Okay. And what's the best contact number, Cynthia?
516 571 6808.
Great. Perfect. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us today, Cynthia. She is the Executive Director of the New York Coalition for Transportation Safety. We learned a lot about safety. Hopefully all of our listeners kind of will think twice about certain things and certain kind of refresh your education in these things. I'd like to thank everyone else who joined us today. You're listening to Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio.